Our viewers, my name is Lucien Jeffrey. Welcome to the Entrepreneur TV show. We are very happy to always bring this for you every week. And we have the Entrepreneur TV show to showcase members of the business community here in London, Ontario. And really, the view is for you to know who is here and who is doing business, what type of businesses are here, so that if you ever need any service, you can go to them. My name is Lucien Jeffrey. I'm the host and producer, and I've enjoyed doing this for the last 4 years. I would like to let you know that this show is sponsored by the Entrepreneur Nation, and the Entrepreneur Nation is a business development group. We offer referral networks, we offer business networking for entrepreneurs and the business community. We've been doing this for the last 5 years, and the Entrepreneur Nation is countrywide now. Today, I have great guests that I'm going to bring to you, and the guests are coming to speak to us about several things that have been happening since the pandemic. And I have Patricia Berendsen, and I have Hannah Vanderheyden. I think I pronounced that name correctly. Let me see if Hannah will help us to pronounce the name properly. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Awesome.
Vanderheyden, Hannah Vanderheyden.
Hayden. So thank
Hayden.
you so much.
Thank you.
And Patricia, did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did.
After you have taught me several times how to do it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, you're
So,
welcome.
welcome to the Entrepreneur TV show. We invited you because I believe we are coming to the end of the pandemic, and we want you to tell us what has been going on. So, I'm really happy that we pick topics that our viewers might want to know from your perspective what has been going on. And I would like to start with Patricia to briefly introduce yourself before we dive into the questions.
Thanks, Lucy. I'm Patricia Berendsen, and I work and own Patricia Berendsen and Associates Trauma Healing Center of London. I've been in business since 1997 and love it more today than I did even when I started. Uh, at our center, we work with basically all cradle to grave, work with anybody who wants to work toward their healing. We do couple therapy, work with individuals, families. We do groups, trainings, coaching, executive coaching, a lot, hosting events. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
Awesome, great. Nice to know that. And Anna, please, brief introduction.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Hannah, and I work with Patricia. I was recently just arrived here from Vancouver. I had started working with her virtually from the West and was so inspired by my work with her that I decided to fly on out here and move to London and partner with her. So I specialize when I work with individuals and couples in something called somatic therapy. And my biggest reason for being here is to bring engagement and connection facilitation to communities to support their wellness and vitality, which is incredibly important as we recover from COVID. So that's just some fun things that I do in a nutshell. But yeah, there's a lot to what we do. But yeah, a lot of work with individuals and communities.
Awesome. We're going to learn all that. Thank you so much. So,
Yeah.
Patricia, I wanted to ask you then, and the topic today is recovery from COVID pandemic and its impact to businesses. I'm sure we are also going to touch on its impacts to families. So, my question then, when we dig specifically to this, how did we get here? And how has the pandemic impacted us? I want us to break it down into impacting people at work, impacting people at home, and impacting people in relationships. So, Patricia, would you like us to take us through?
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So one of the things I'd like to start with when we're talking about difficult topics is to invite us to take a moment, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, and just check in about how are you experiencing yourself right now. Um, Are you feeling tension anywhere? Are you feeling happy, sad? And just taking that time to check in to see what's happening in your body, because our body really speaks to us, and we've gone through a lot as a culture. And so we want to have that support from our physiology to be able to talk about these topics from a grounded and more embodied state. So, how do we get here and what's the impact? Well, the pandemic has impacted everything. There hasn't been one thing that it hasn't had, uh, there haven't been consequences of some kind. I mean, and we're talking globally, locally, and to the smallest families. Like, it's just been very, very difficult for us. And one of the major things is how we are removed from connection to one another. We had to wear masks. We had to line up at grocery stores. We had to suddenly work from home. We didn't know what initially, if we remember, um, we didn't know what the threat was really. It was not clear. So even people became a threat, like people that we didn't know, because you're wondering, like, oh, like, am I going to get sick from you? And so there was just a lot of disconnection from one another, and that has had really significant consequences. And the pandemic has just changed everything, Lucy. So I don't know, Hannah, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, Anna, please, if you can add anything about how it has changed things at work, at home, and in relationships, any of those.
Yes. I think one of the biggest things that we lost was our gatherings, our opportunity to connect with people face to face, to touch each other, to make actual eye contact. All of these things that support positive neurochemicals in the brain that support us with bonding and maintaining our wellness. So yeah, I think that was one of the most tragic things that happened. And then definitely, of course, there were couples that ended up working at home from inside their closets. I've talked to many teachers who were working in like their parents' bedroom and actually got locked at their family members' houses and worked from home, literally in closets for months in months, like in a dark closet, while the kids are running around downstairs. So there is some pretty profound strain that was pressed on family ecosystems, on love dynamics, and it caused a lot of uproar in terms of really facing where our relationships are at and all of those cracks essentially that we had been overlooking by having so much space and time from one another. It turned into a global wake-up call in a lot of ways.
Thank you. And we will definitely talk about those cracks, right? We'll dig deeper into that. But I understand what you're saying, that the pandemic caused isolation, right?
Yeah.
People were isolated. Kids could not go and play together anymore. As you said, we started fearing people. Up to this day, I don't shake people's hands. I don't, right? So because I don't know. So it's really something that changed the way we relate with each other, and I get it. So of course, when things change like that, there must be consequences, right? And I believe that what has happened is not necessarily all positive. So I want us to dig deep into that. And I want to ask Patricia, so what have we learned from the pandemic first and foremost before we go to the cracks? And so then what are the cracks that have developed, and how can we recognize them?
Well, I think what we've learned from the pandemic, um, the major lesson is we need each other. And when we don't have gatherings, like Hannah said, when we don't have milestones to experience, there's huge losses. I I'm remembering like people who were sick during the pandemic. Like if we remember at the very beginning of it, people were dying like crazy. And so it was very scary. And and so other people during the pandemic, like relatives, friends, passed away and they couldn't have funerals or graduations. If you had a child that was graduating from elementary school or high school or university, that wasn't happening. Weddings weren't happening. All of the company uh, gatherings, company meetings, the things that you would normally do, going on a trip to learn whatever about your craft, you weren't going anywhere. And that was very, very difficult for us as a species because we're a tribal culture. We need people. And even the recommendation to socially distance instead of physical distance, uh, we really didn't need to stop being social, but we did need to stay 6 feet apart. Um, but I think for a lot of us, we just became like we didn't really interact with people. I remember standing in grocery lines 6 feet apart, and everyone had their masks on, and no one was talking. It was really somber. And, we had a few years of that. So it's we're just starting, like in my practice, that it's kind of like an avalanche where people thought they were doing okay and they're not so okay coming out of the pandemic.
I totally get it. And you know what, Patricia, we tend to forget very quickly. We tend to forget very quickly what happened. And I remember us closing the offices, like I closed down my office. Things changed completely. The world changed. And I remember this TV show I was doing it. I had a TV studio. People were coming to the studio in person. We shut all that down, but we learned something. We learned that we could do it virtually. So there's some really bad things that happened, very negative, and people losing life, and we are sorry for that. But there are also
Mhm.
some positive things that happened, that people learned that you can actually still do business virtually on Zoom, like, virtually the way we are doing now, and still be able to survive and go on. So we learned survival tactics. That's what I'm trying to say here. And also, I didn't think that it was new for everybody. Even the politicians who made the decisions that we should socially distance instead of physically distancing, everyone was learning, and it's a crisis, managing through crisis. So
Mhm.
let's see then, what are the real deeper cracks, stress, mental health issues? Who want to speak to us about the mental health issues and really what happened to a human being when we found ourselves in that situation?
Mhm.
Who want
Well,
to go?
one of the things that was impacted was our sense of safety. One of the like what we do as humans is we scan people's faces, we scan their eyes, and that registers in our own body and our mind like, oh, that person looks like a kind person. That person looks really grumpy. Maybe I'll stay out of their way. And the pandemic made that much more difficult because we couldn't see people. Sometimes we were locked, like we barely could go for a walk. People weren't sure even if that was safe. Um, and so the impact of not seeing people has really, I think, increased people's anxiety. The baseline for anxiety is much higher now than it was prior to the pandemic. And people who maybe had anxiety or depression prior to the pandemic were doing, like, they were managing it. During the pandemic, after the pandemic, they're on stress leave. And that has caused an incredible amount of stress in the workplace, um, because that, HR and the people, who are in management positions have to kind of figure out on the fly, what do we do? Um, and and it's still an issue. Kids who had maybe some school difficulties before don't want to go to school anymore. Parents, I just talked to someone the other day. They're still recovering from the burnout from being at home and homeschooling their kids. It's, some people are having memorial services like 3 years after their parent died. Like, it's just bizarre, the things that have happened, and so we're really paying a big price for it, and we need to learn to see each other again as safe people, that we're part of the human family, and we've gone through this together, so we can heal through this together.
Thank you, Patricia. So, and I totally get what you're saying. So, my question is, this must have led to deeper stress, deeper mental health issues. I understand that now we have more homelessness. I don't know if you are comfortable talking about that. I understand that if you go to the streets like Danda Street and Richmond, we have more people there now than we had in the pandemic. I understand in other cities the same. Do you think the pandemic must have caused this?
I think homelessness has always been an issue. And I think what has happened is people deal with stress differently. And so for some people, addictions took on um, a bigger role in their life. People were drinking a lot of wine, a lot of beer, maybe using a lot of other substances. Financially, it's been a hit for a lot of people, other than, Amazon type folks who, are doing the delivery services. But, it has really changed. Like, people weren't able to work. The cost of living even now is just astronomically higher than it was, and our wages haven't grown in the same rate. And some businesses had to shut down. They couldn't work, and you know, it was. I think those kinds of things um, probably influenced more homelessness in the city.
Thank you for letting us know. And when you talk about drinking, everything else was shut down, but LCMBO was open, right? The
Yep.
government making that decision. So people have had access to alcohol, even though they didn't have access to jobs, right? So some of this might have cost and all that. So let me ask you then, what do you suggest would be the most helpful support and recovery from the past 3 years? What should people do to recover? What needs to be done, Patricia?
I think we need to start connecting with ourselves and our bodies, and recognizing we have one, and and really listening deeper to the what it's communicating to us. It's always communicating to us, just like there are broadcasting energies so that we can have this program. We have to tune in to a specific frequency in order to have this show. The same is with our bodies. It's always broadcasting and giving us information. And so starting with that, and growing in trust that we can get through this together. I don't know if you remember the images of people clanging their pots and pans and singing outside, and you know, that was people doing really creative things, uh, just to try to have some kind of connection. I mean, thank goodness we have electronic capacity so that we could have some connection. But as you know, and it's not the same as being in person and hugging, you know, your grandchild or hugging a close friend. Like, it's so different. Especially, I remember attending a funeral, and there was, and this was sort of at the end of the pandemic, but you know, having to not pass a certain line and having to be, you know, 6 feet apart, and your response is you want to hug somebody when they're grieving, and no, that wasn't happening. So starting with us and then learning to trust one another, and you know, start having community again.
Yeah, very depressing. And I'm hoping that there will be no other pandemic in our lifetime, right? We want to move on with life, and I'm happy that life has started taking place as we know it. And,
Yeah.
you know, I want to say this, Patricia, and thank you, because during the pandemic is when I created the CEOs Club and decided to come up with a group of leaders who would
Mhm.
help each other, because it was a crisis that nobody knew how to deal with it. You have employees, they are looking up to you, but you don't know what to tell them. So leaders came together and we helped each other to manage. I remember lawyers, employment lawyers coming and saying, this is what you need to do, you know, to help us so we don't even get sued for making the wrong decisions. And you became part of that group and you are very active. We appreciate you. So I have a question then. Is it for you or for Anna? And maybe for you at CEO level, what advice or help that you think Linda should have as the COVID landscape starts changing? What advice do you have for leaders now, especially because you knew where we came from at the CEO level and where we are at this point?
Things that happen are always opportunities for, excuse me, for growing and learning. And the pandemic also opened up our creativity, and some rules or guidelines or ways that our businesses were structured needed to be changed, and they weren't serving really the people. They might have been serving the corporation or the organization, but not necessarily in service of the employees. And so there's the opportunity to look at the systems that we had and change them, and more importantly, to work on us. I really believe leadership starts at the top, and we need to set the example that we want people to follow. And it's a good time to do that, and also to consult with other people. It's important that our egos, we just leave them at the door if we have them. Like, because we really need, I think, a certain humility to be more transparent with one another, like at the CEO club, and not try to just puff up and promote our businesses. It's really about, hey, how can we help one another, and not you know give this facade, I guess you could call it, of everything's fine, because everything isn't fine. We're all struggling and juggling and recovering, and we need each other. So I think that's a huge piece. And I know that's where Hannah and I really have passion for, you know, revolutionizing workplaces and supporting them to make some of these changes. So I don't, Hannah, you might want to. say something to that.
Yeah.
And say something to that.
Yes, thank you. I think when it comes to leadership in any kind, whether it's your household, whether it's a school system, whether you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, social trust, revitalizing social trust, I think is key here. And how do we do that? How do we revitalize our trust socially with our neighbors, with the people that we're working with? We've created so much space and stagnancy, even between our social skills, that help us to connect in different ways. There's so much repair here that's needed. And we found that the most succinct way to start that healing process is through our gatherings. So it is the ways in which we are bringing teams together and the quality of those gatherings. We are revolutionizing the way that happens in a way that's time efficient and effective, of really getting us to deeper layers of connection, intimacy, and therefore healing growth during this very unique time in history. So one of the steps in doing that, of actually supporting our teams, is working with professionals who are choosing to specialize in this at this time. We do exist. Patricia and I are examples, and I know a few different people of my teams from the West who are working virtually and in person with teams all over the globe to help us transition through this.
Awesome. Really great. So we are coming to an end of the topic, and I really appreciate you for coming here today. I wanted to ask you, Patricia, you have been part of the Entrepreneur Nation. It's your second year now. You joined the Oak Ridge chapter, and then you joined the CEO's Club, and thankfully, Anna joined you. And so she's now taking care of the Oak Ridge, and you're taking care of the CEO's Club. How is it going for you, Patricia?
I really love it. I'm so impressed with the diversity of the, whether it's the chapter or the CEO Club. There's always so much learning, and the other day we learned what do we do outside of work, and that was so much fun to hear. People's passion projects, people's skills that we didn't know they had. So that was the fun side, but there's also like some really difficult conversations about how do we handle mental health at work. It's a thing now that's really in the open, and is causing a lot of people to feel a little like, I don't really know what to do. Can you help with that? So it's been great just to have conversations with people and just to hear the wisdom of the group. Lots of years of experience.
Awesome, great. And very soon, as you sent, I think you sent that people struggle in different ways. We've decided that the CEO's Club, instead of focusing just on the positive side, because bad things do happen, right? People do business in a difficult situation. So let's also talk about those difficulties, and that's what we are going to be talking about. People get sued, people sue. And we never talk about those things. So looking at the tough situations and the challenges that we have to overcome to do business is the next level that we need to be looking at, and we are going to be discussing that. So with that said, then, do you have any last points for our viewers? Patricia, do you have anything last points for our viewers?
I would say we're in it together, and we need to work at our reconnection so that we can support belonging at work, and it's okay to ask for help from one another. That's not a bad thing to do. It's a really wise thing to do, and I just think like we're gonna get through it. I mean, we are, but we can't do it without each other.
Awesome, great.
Yeah.
And our viewers, this is Lucy and Jeffrey, and I'm with our guests here, Patricia and Hannah. We're happy to learn from them, and thank you for watching.